Welcome, everyone. With great respect, Zócalo Public Square acknowledges the Yavatam, the first people of this ancestral and unceded territory of Yaanga that we now know of as Los Angeles. We honor their elders past and present and the Yavatam descendants who are part of the Gabrieleño Tongva and the Fernandeño Tataviam nations. We recognize that the Tongva are still here and we are committed to lifting up their stories, culture, and community. As Kuuyam, we recognize our responsibility and obligation to care for their land. I'm Moira Shori, the Executive Director of Zócalo Public Square, a creative unit of Arizona State University. Thank you, everyone who is here tonight, and for all of you online. Thank you for joining us at the ASU California Center at the historic Herald Examiner building. At Zócalo, our mission is to connect people to ideas and to one another. Everything we do is free and everyone is welcome. We publish original writing and present conversations like this one. You can find us at zocalopublicsquare.org, on all major podcast platforms, and on YouTube, so please subscribe to our latest events. Since I have your attention, I'd like to offer you a sneak peek to the 2022 Zócalo Book Prize, which we have awarded annually for 12 years, to the author of a nonfiction book that best enhances our understanding of community and the forces that strengthen or undermine human connectedness and social cohesion. This year's shortlisted books include an economist's analysis of what racism costs all of us, a journalist's story about how the opioid crisis is devastating American communities, a first-person memoir about working in the Bakken oil fields of North Dakota, and a history of what role drunkenness has played in building civilization. You are all invited to our book prize event that will take place in this room in the spring of 2022. Tonight, we're asking, how do we begin again? It's an appropriate question for our first public event in this, our new home, the Herald Examiner building, in this historic building, which is having its own new beginning. Our moderator is Gustavo Arellano, writer, podcast host, and columnist for the Los Angeles Times. He is the author of Taco USA, How Mexican Food Conquered America, Orange County, A Personal History, and Ask a Mexican. Over to you, Gustavo.
Ready? Listo? Dale.
I feel like Mr. Rogers right now, so just, it's a little bit stuffy, but it's okay. Hold on. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Moira, and thank you, Zócalo Public Square. Thank you, ASU. Thank you, the late, great Los Angeles Herald Examiner, for still keeping this amazing, beautiful building. My name is Gustavo Arellano, and thank you all for coming out tonight. We're going to have a great discussion. Hello to all of you watching at home via Zoom. Thank you. Technology, yeah. I'm going to introduce my guests. I'm going to pull out my iPhone for the official bios. I could name them by name, but we have good bios for them. So as I call, as I name you guests, please come up and sit going down this way. So Fabian Debora is an artist and the executive director of the Homeboy Art Academy. He has worked at Homeboy for over 10 years and has also worked with Arts for Incarcerated Youth Network, Alliance for California Traditional Arts, and Latino Production Action Network. So round of applause for Fabian. Thank you for joining. Bamby Salcedo is the president and CEO of the TransLatin Coalition, a national organization that focuses on addressing the issue of transgender Latinas in the U.S. She has won numerous awards for her activist work in support of transgender rights and community. Round of applause for Bamby, please. And Dr. Annette Stanton is Distinguished Professor and Chair of the Department of Psychology at UCLA. Go Bruins. She studies the factors that help and hinder people facing health-related challenges, and her research has focused on people confronting cancer and other chronically stressful experiences. So, Doctor, come on down, Dr. Stanton. So this topic is incredibly profound. I'm going to get to it in a little bit, but before we get into it, we want to start this with a group exercise, of course. We're talking about beginning again, but before we can begin again, I do think we need to acknowledge these past 2 years, acknowledge the people that we lost, the people we've left behind in some sorts. So if everyone right now could just close your eyes and just call to mind someone that you lost, someone maybe that is still around here, but you're not really talking to as much anymore for, the actions of the past 2 years or whatnot, to somebody. So think of one person, call them out if the spirit fills you. I'm gonna call out one person that I did not know personally, but I did a column about, Father Francisco Valdovinos, who was pastor, Our Lady of Mecca, out in the Coachella Valley in the city of Mecca. And Father Francisco Valdovinos spent all of 2020 fighting, protecting his community against COVID, urging everyone to mask up, to distance, and to get the vaccine when it finally came about. Sadly, he passed away of COVID before the vaccine. He passed away about a year ago this month. So if we could just do a moment of silence, keep someone in mind. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone that we all thought of. So, thank you. All right, let's get to the discussion at hand. How we begin again. It's an interesting title for me. It's an interesting concept. I didn't think of it, by the way. Zócalo did. I was surprised it wasn't how do we start over. I also think it's interesting, begin again, as opposed to how do we begin. So for each of you, what does that idea mean to you, begin again? So if we could start with Fabian and just go around, begin again, what does that mean to you?
I guess it all depends on the context that we're applying it to, right? So how do we begin again? If we're corresponding to a need, a dire need that has been plaguing my community of Boyle Heights for quite some time, then I think we have never stopped. All we did now is to learn to adapt and understanding the vitality of this work and working with formerly gang-involved and incarcerated young men and women. I think the vitality of this work it's a dire need. So we've been consistent and we've been putting in every effort needed in order to make the world a safer place. Corresponding during this pandemic, it just amplified, that need. And so how do we begin again? I think a lot of the answers have been, not answers, but a lot of the medicine has been handed to us. And I think we take it back to basics, if you will call them basics. And for me, basics means just leaning on the cultural knowledge and the cultural aesthetics and ancestry, where we find the medicine in order to continue to move towards that healing element that is greatly needed in my community.
Yeah, no, totally. It's interesting because you're mentioning it's within ourselves in your community, Boyle Heights. Like the answers are already there, so not a matter of beginning again. It's more like resetting yourself and seeing this is what's in front of you. This is what's always been around you.
Absolutely, and I think this is the investment is necessary, right? The continuum in investing. And these particular populations. And I speak on behalf of gang-involved, formerly incarcerated men and women. And that's what my responsibility has been as someone who comes from that lifestyle and yet has found this way via the arts and also through the resources such as Homeboy Industries and many around the area. And so I think it's just, for me, it's a responsibility and investment should continue to happen. And I think we are living in these moments that we should not lose sight of. Change has happened, change is happening, and we all can invest and contribute to that change and not fall back into the comfort zone that has created exclusion in the first place.
Totally. Bamby, what does begin again mean to you?
Bueno, primero que nada, yo quiero dar gracias a mi poder superior por darme la oportunidad de vivir un día más. Y también quiero honrar la tierra en la que estamos hoy en día y pedir permiso a la gente de esta tierra que me permita decir unas palabras en su tierra. I know that it was probably hard for some of you to understand what I just said, but I usually, before I open my mouth when I'm speaking in public, I like to acknowledge my higher power for giving me the opportunity to breathe one more day. And I also honor the land where we're standing on, and I ask permission to the people of this land to allow me to say a few words. I also want to honor your beautiful presence here. I know that this is the first event that Zócalo is putting together, and so thank you so much for your time and for sharing space and community with us. What does it mean to begin again? You know, as a trans woman, and you know, for many of us, members of the same community, I think every day is a rebirth, right? It's como un renacer for all of us, simply because of the violence that we experience, right? Both the institutional and historical violence that we have experienced that translates into interpersonal violence, right? I think it's important to recognize that here in the United States, this year, 2021, is a record number of murders in the trans community. I don't know how many of you know, but there's like more than 45 of us who have been killed this year. And so every day that we wake up, particularly trans women of color, it's like a new beginning for us, right? They say that we walk with targets on our back. And so for me personally, as someone who, como mujer, trans, latina, emigrante, who is always devalued for who I am, and it's the same for many of my sisters. And so I think, you know, every single day of our lives is un nuevo comienzo, it's a rebirth for us.
Yeah, it's incredible in that sense, but also harrowing, I would imagine. In your, you know, the people that you work with, they're seeing every day, as you said, they're going out into the world. Some people are, you know, are affirming themselves for the first time publicly, and yet there must be a joy with that, but also a fear in beginning again and having to begin again, seemingly almost every day, almost every week, almost all the time.
I mean, I would even go further and say that the world hates us because we're truthful to ourselves, right? We face the world simply as who we are, right? Like the world continues to tell us that we are not supposed to exist, that who we are is wrong. And, you know, every single day, you know, it's a revolutionary act, right? When we walk out of the doors, if we have a home, right? Because there's many of us who experience many challenges with homelessness and other types of discrimination, right? I think it's important to recognize that, you know, we are one of the populations that is the most marginalized, that is the most persecuted simply because of who we are. Even in this land, right? Particularly for those who are immigrants who come to this country seeking the American dream, only to come here to find the American nightmare.
Yeah. Dr. Stanton, what does begin again mean to you?
Well, I think begin again means partly how you started us off. Because we don't begin again until we acknowledge where we are and the losses we might have been through in these past 18 months or more. And so that kind of acknowledgement is something that's important when you begin again. I think I was probably asked here because I study people with cancer, and many people with cancer go through a sort of phase when they finish treatment You know, they've been putting all their energy into going through their chemotherapy, and to going through the surgery, and to going through really hard stuff. And then when they finish that treatment, there's this sense of, wow, I should be celebrating. Everything should be great. You know, I'm well again. And some people, you know, expect you. Sometimes your family expects you to be well again. But it's not as if you haven't gone through something really important. And sometimes it takes some reflection on that to think about, okay, now where am I going to go after being in this cancer experience? And so it's not done, you know, when you finish treatment, just like it's not going to be done when we finish a pandemic or a racial reckoning or trauma. You know, it's not done. Although we can move forward, in part because we can acknowledge where we've been, just like you did at the beginning.
Yeah, as a psychologist, what do you think is the difference between beginning again and starting over? Like, as you know, experiencing with people, what's a different mindset that people get into with those terms? Or are they exactly the same?
Well, I have to tell you that when I hear begin again, I like that term better, and I think that words matter. And so beginning again is something that we do throughout our lives. So we can continue to do that. Starting over somehow seems like we've never done anything before, so we have to start completely over. That's not true. We bring the strengths that we've had, we bring the traumas that we've had, and so begin again somehow gives you more continuity. And so I sort of connect with the begin again term more.
Starting over, I mean, I'm also thinking this out loud as well. Starting over to me kind of signifies a failure of sorts. Like when you start your car again, you start it over. It's like, okay, we're going to start again. Or you game over, you start it again. Begin again to me is a little bit more, I don't know, liberating. Fabian, Bamby, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think beginning again, to me, it sounds like an invitation to revisit the lessons learned. Rather than start over, is undoing what we have learned. I think that's the way I pick it up. So beginning again, it just means going back to one's personal lived experience and possibly revisiting those lessons learned through those experiences that can be beneficial for the evolution or movement as we move forward, rather than undoing what we have
Bamby?
learned.
Yeah, the way I think of this question, beginning again, right? It's I take it as an opportunity, right? An opportunity to recognize and organize, right? Like, or reorganize, whether it's a thought process or whether it's an action that we have to do. I think, you know, for me, it's also a place for, you know, to understand the possibilities, right, that they are out there, and the amazing work or the amazing opportunities that are out there for us to grab, right? I think despite the challenges, we have to understand that there is always this, you know, beginning again process, right, that we can go through, acknowledge it, but also, you know, move forward.
On a personal level, you know, we always begin again. Humanity always has. When we have the chance, we'll try it. But these past 2 years have created this extraordinary opportunity for all of us to be able to begin again in some sort. So Fabian, to all panelists, how have you used these past 2 years to set yourself up in a position for whatever's next in your personal and or professional lives? So if we could start with Dr. Stanton, actually.
Sometimes I feel as if I'm just sort of hanging on to get through these past couple of years, you know, just supporting people, you know, in my organization and just sort of making it through to the next day. But that said, I also see it as an opportunity in terms of, you know, we thought that like at UCLA, we thought that, you know, people had to be in their offices to work, and the staff had to be in their offices. It had to be in their offices or had to be wherever, and we know that that's not true. now. And so we're entering a different world where we don't have to be always in one place doing one thing. People who had to commute, an hour and a half to get to UCLA for their jobs, well, maybe they can do their jobs at home at least some time, and that works. So thinking about, I guess for me, it's been thinking about, well, how can we change systems that fit people better so that we can begin again in a way that is some things are still in place, but some things will change and change intentionally.
And sometimes it's as simple as literally working from home. Like instead, throughout, as long as there's been office culture, the idea is you cannot replicate office culture. You cannot replicate the camaraderie or even work. If you're away, you have to be right there in your cubicles with a phone or whatnot. And we've kind of figured out you kind of don't need to do that. It's cool to be in person, but you don't have to.
Yeah, I think that is true. Although I do have to say that personal connection, that is really important too. And so figuring out how we can connect at the same time as having a little bit more flexibility.
Bamby, how have you used these past 2 years to set yourself up to?
I mean, it's interesting that I hear, some the way people think, right? I think that it's important that we acknowledge and understand, right, that not everybody has the same privilege, right? To be able to work from home, for instance, right? To actually, our people, right, like, are the ones who, have to work, right? Like, have to put themselves at risk in order for those who have the ability to work from home or have an office that they can eat, that, like, all of those things, right? Like, and so it's interesting that, we don't think of people first, right? And we as an organization, at the beginning of this pandemic, we made the decision for us not to close our center, right? Because we know that I am a trans woman and I am the leader of this organization, and I have gone through the same things that many members of my community have continued to go through today, even though I started my transition 30 years ago, right? And so, we know that when the world closed out, right, we give food every day to our people, right? And so we knew that even if it was food that we needed to provide our people, we needed to do that, right? And so it was hard for us to adapt, as a small organization. It was hard, to see my friends, going to hospital and knowing that they were the last ones to be treated simply because they're trans, right? And so what we needed to do and we wanted to do was at least to provide a bit of hope, right? Like, for our people to know that they didn't have to go through this by themselves, right? Like, that there was us, right? Because even oftentimes for trans people, even our families are not even there, right? Like, most of us are rejected by our families. And so, for us, it was important for our community to know that we were there, even if it was just to provide food, right? Because we had to also not let people into our center. We had to close. But even if it was sandwiches that we needed to make, we wanted to have that available for our people, right? And then throughout the pandemic, right, even when most people had the privilege to get their stimulus check, right? Most trans people didn't have the ability to do that, right? Because why? Because most trans people are not working, because we continue to face discrimination in employment, right? And so we were not able to even benefit from that. Even here in the state of California, when the governor allocated $70 million to support undocumented people, right? Trans people who were undocumented were not even able to benefit from that, right? And so we as an organization and as a community needed to also figure out ways to support our community, right? With basic things, right? And so we were very lucky that some foundations and even some individuals who contributed for us to be able to support our community directly with, rental assistance and gift cards for them to provide food and things like that.
Yeah. Fabian?
Well, for us, we adapted to the best of our ability, meaning that, of course, we had to come up with creative ways to adapt in ways that, for example, when we talk about reentry, we know we have a lot of men coming out of prison or jail, and the first thing they go see is Homeboy Industries. Well, guess what? Homeboy Industries is now closed due to a pandemic. So we're like, damn, now we have to really come around and strategize how we're going to really service that individual, because he will reoffend or go back to the lifestyle. And so what we would do is, one, we have over 300 homeboys and homegirls who currently work in the organization. So what we had to do is utilize our case management efforts and then go visit them at home, drop off food at home. Sometimes make special appointments, make that human connection that you're talking about. Because we did have a lot of death in between the pandemic due to gang violence, overdoses, and suicide.
Yeah.
And it was a trip because it was very difficult for us, but that's the way we were able to adapt. We were blessed too, and fortunate enough that some people did touch their hearts and donated in ways that they wanted to be part of that solution. So that helped us on many levels as well.
Given the unique pains, Bamby and Fabian, that your organizations, the people that are in your organizations felt or dealt with, how did you rally to give them hope through this, especially during the darkest times when you're not able to get stimulus checks, where there is so much death and it's not stopping? What were either the actions or the words that each of you gave to the people that you dealt with to give them hope and say, like, hey, we can get to that next better place eventually, but we will get there?
Well, I mean, what we had to also do was adapt to the new environment, right? But I think, through the work that we did, right? Because we also were like doing amazing work, right? Like even during a global pandemic, our organization, we built a statewide coalition of trans-led organizations to ensure the passage of Assembly Bill 2218, which is a Transgender Wellness and Equity Fund, right? And we were asking, we were doing first budget advocacy, but then, one of those pieces was turned into Assembly Bill 2218, and we were asking for $15 million to support trans-led organizations across the state, but because of the pandemic, that money was removed, right? Nonetheless, we made history in the middle of a global pandemic, and we had so much opposition, right? Like, I mean, we had religious groups, we had all kinds of conservative individuals, and even there was this group of people who did transition, who were coming really hard on us. But nonetheless, we made history. We passed, we learned that at the state of California, it was the first time that a bill was introduced by trans people. And then this year, the governor allocated another $15 million that we initially asked for, but $13 million nonetheless was a win, right? And this is specifically to support the work the trans-led organizations and groups are doing across the state. So through our work, I think we obviously give hope to people, and the fact that we remained open, right? That was one of the things that gave hope to people, and really, the first month was like, even our staff, most of our staff, work from home, but then after as we got accustomed to it, then, people wanted to come back to the office, and that's how we started also providing case management services through the different programs that we have. So I think, for us, when we see ourselves reflected, I think we see the possibilities, right? Like when we see that, yes, you can do it, we are doing it, right? Like, that is a bit of hope that we can at least provide.
Even in a year where there's been so much violence and so against trans folks, and so much just, the COVID pandemic and all the economic fallout from that as well. Yeah, that is incredible. Fabian, what about with the people you're working with?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, I think because of the years of traumatic experiences that we come from, I think resiliency it's at hand. So I think for me personally is to remind them of that resiliency and those challenges and obstacles that they have already overcome. And that's let alone the pandemic. We've been dealing with this prior to the pandemic because of all the things that we are encountered with.
But did the pandemic make it even harder?
Well, yeah, it did amplify it. Yeah. It did amplify, but because there is already some power in our resiliency that we have discovered previously to the pandemic, then it only served as a reminder to lean on that and to overcome this new challenge and be creative and adaptive in ways to, like, come on, we're walking in this together, bro, like, don't trip, and constantly reminding them of their truth and so on and so forth. And then creatively, what is it that you need? And then come up with it in that moment. You know what I mean? Individually, we had to come up with various creative ways for individuals to stay close to us.
No, incredible. Dr. Stanton, resiliency, cancer patients. My mother, she passed away from cancer, but when she was fighting that fight, you want to talk about courage and all that, it's there. So talking to those folks, they're always going to be fighting. They're always going to be pushing. What were you telling them, to the people you're dealing with during these past 2 years? It's already hard enough to begin with. Now you have this pandemic that's keeping a lot of them away from their families, keeping a lot of that personal touch away. What would you tell them in terms of facing what's in front of them and saying, like, you can push through this, or you could at least try to get to a better place?
I think what we've heard so far, in part, it's not, oh, look on the bright side, things are going to be fine. It's not platitude. It really is more, this is really hard. And you have the capacity. You've gone through hard things before, and what helped you then, and what's going to help you now. So it's not so much telling people, okay, oh, things are just going to be fine. It's really walking with them, or figuring out from them what has got them through tough things before.
Yeah. Incredible. You were going to say something, Fabian?
No.
Oh, that's you were. We're going to take questions about 10 minutes. So those of you who are watching at home, start asking them right there. If any of you in the audience have any questions, start thinking of them. One question I want to ask all of you, in your respective communities that you deal with, what can they teach the rest of us about how to begin again? So we'll start with the doctor.
Oh, I remember one night I was doing a group for people with cancer, and I remember driving home during that time and saying to myself, because I didn't have cancer, you don't have to get cancer to change your life. And so I think one of the things that people with cancer have taught me and have taught so many others is that, cancer is a wake-up call to what's important in my life. And if I'm not doing what's most meaningful to me, if I'm not doing what brings me joy, if I need to change something in my life, I better do it now, because cancer hits you in the face with, well, how long am I going to be here? And so that sense of what brings meaning now, and the sense of what's my major priorities now, that I think is part of what cancer teaches people. If I don't live my life now the way I want it, I'm going to be gone someday, so I better do it now.
And also not just gone someday, but sometimes you don't know when that day is going to be. It could be super quick. It could be in a decade. So I think that just como se dice, solidifies that idea of like, it's time to do it, it's now or never to, as that old song went.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Bamby, what can we learn from the trans community about how to begin again?
I mean, I think what people can learn about who we are is really seeing our humanity, right? Seeing and understanding that we walk this earth as everyone else, right? That we shouldn't be devalued because of who we are, right? But I always get inspiration in the people that I work with. Just when people get to our organization, for instance, right? Like I learned of one of our compañeras who she was saying, like, I just got out. Today is my 90th day that I got her from prison after doing 24 years, right? And she's been volunteering with us, and she's going to be one of our staff, right? And so we can learn from trans people, right? Like that we are just who we are, but that we also are able to accomplish amazing things, right? If we are provided the opportunity, right? I can certainly say that about myself, right? When someone saw in me something that I was not able to see in myself, right? When someone, when my sister Valerie Spencer told me, you're gonna do great things, right? I didn't even know that, right? And so she believed in me. When I was hired by my sister Maria Roman, who was the program manager of this organization, right? And believed in me and gave me the opportunity to work at this organization, right? And from there I evolved, right? And I think, if we have the ability to provide opportunities to our community, I think it's important that we start learning the importance of investing in trans lives, right? So we need to be invested on. We need to know as a community that the world knows and believes that we are amazing people, because we are. It's just that all of us have been brainwashed to think that trans people should not exist because of who we are, right? But we are amazing people and we can do great things. We just need that opportunity. We need that investment in our lives, right? So that we can continue to evolve, right? Not begin again because we are walking this earth, right? But really, we want to be able to walk this earth and our path with grace. And any and every of you can contribute to that.
Fabian, what can we learn from former gang members and formerly incarcerated, how to begin again?
I mean, I think there's some common themes and threads. I think if we begin to help us remove all those misconceptions and those stereotypes that have been said of us, the criminals, they don't deserve second chances. Get to know us, get to know us, our stories, and maybe there you might find an answer to where the things that we are partake in stem from. And I think I am a true testament of what given an opportunity and investment can look like. Today I'm a firm leader in my community and I have impacted many lives. Now imagine if you invest on many more, how we can all make this world a safer place. So just get to know our story, give us a minute or two, and I'm very sure that we will shift the mindset that has been created by the systemic infrastructure that we live in.
Yeah.
Final question before we get to the audience. How are each of you going to begin again in 2022? Whoever wants to take it first.
I mean, I think for me personally, I would just, as a firm advocate of the populations that I serve and people from my community, I think I'm just going to, just like the pandemic amplified our situation, then I'm going to amplify and take on this opportunity to continue to invite folks to help us to create that equity and that access and those resources that are needed to help us reach those that goal or be part of that bigger picture, whatever that looks like. So I'm going to just bank on these opportunities and continue to advocate even stronger.
More than ever, yeah.
More than ever. Mm-hmm.
Bamby?
You want to go next?
No?
Okay. So the way I'm going to end this year and the way I'm going to begin next year is something that I've been doing for about 15 years now. I seclude myself. I take the last 2 weeks of the year off, and I write, and I use that as an opportunity for me to reflect and to heal and to write and to just be together with my Creator. And I clean my house thoroughly. I open, I clean my closet. I believe in new blessings. But I need to open space for new blessings. So
Marie Kondo everything, right?
I believe that. And I don't go out on New Year's Eve. I stay home and I sort of like pamper myself. I go and get flowers, and I go to the water, and then I take a bath with flowers and all of the good stuff, and then I welcome the new year for fresh like that. And so that I'm planning to do that this year also. And so I also do my vision board. So I always like to put things down, what I'm going to.
Have you started it yet?
No, I do it then.
Okay.
I don't want, I completely seclude myself and I disconnect. And so it's just, whatever comes, it's there. And I leave that on my table and I look at it every single day. So that's always like a reflection for me and something to always look towards. So I'm going to do the same. But I think one of the things that we're going to focus on right now, and I want to invite you to participate and contribute, and I'll also, share the thought. We're going to start searching for our own space. So we're going to have our own permanent space, and we're going to start a capital campaign next year. So we want to invite you to participate and be part of that. And so that's a big challenge, but I'm up for the challenge, So
that's great.
Yeah.
Finally, Dr. Stanton, how are you going to begin again, 2022?
Well, I'm with you, except for the cleaning the house part. All of that sounds really good to me. I like the idea of reflection. I like the idea of some gratitude for making it through to where we are, and some acknowledgement of where we have been, and all of that gives us energy for whatever work we're bringing to the world.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to get to questions from the audience, and we'll start with what's going on in Los Angeles. Next year's midterm elections are an opportunity for all of us to begin again. In Los Angeles alone, we'll be electing a new mayor and a lot of new city council members. What advice would all of you, would ustedes give to our aspiring elected leaders and how to lead us civically towards a new beginning?
Should I start?
Go for it, Bamby.
Okay, so what I'm going to say for those inspiring elected officials who are coming to an office, I am going to say bluntly, stop the bullshit.
You can applaud.
Yeah, you can clap. You know, I think, you know, many politicians, you know, they start like with good intentions, but then when they get into office, they forget about the people, and they forget that it's the people who put them into office, and they also forget that they're public servants, and so they need to do that, right? You know, it's just incredible that, you know, here in Los Angeles County, for instance, there is, the Los Angeles County has like $38 billion budget, right? And they got almost $2 billion from the American Rescue Plan. And it's just incredible that the immigrant community here in Los Angeles, which makes more than 36%, are, you know, are not getting their fair share, right? And so, you know, I'm so lucky that I get to be part of a campaign that is called Immigrants Are LA, and we are going to demand the Board of Supervisors and our elected officials, right, to invest also in immigrant communities who are the makeup of, they are essential workers, right? And so, so we want to make sure that that happens, but I want to make sure that also people who are in office that also understand their role, which is really to support people, the ones who are the most marginalized, and not necessarily their friends who continue to get the contracts, who continue to get funded, but rather provide services and support to the people who really need it the most. And obviously that includes trans people, and I'm certainly going to continue to advocate for that.
Well, I would say especially trans people, given that your community has been so marginalized. Traditionally, politicians, yeah, you give money to the people who have supported you and elected you and given you the money.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny, like, you know, a lot of times people reach out to me like they want my endorsement, and I'm like, okay, but what are you giving to people, right? Like, and I'm very, you know, like, I'm not gonna support someone who is just, you know, saying something. Like, I need actions rather than words.
Yeah. Another question. As institutions and places of work are being pushed to center anti-racist frameworks, what can we do to push for, quote, care frameworks into our day-to-day work? And what does this concept of care mean to you in beginning again? Bamby and Dr. Stanton talked about self-care. Fabian, what does care mean to you? Or what's the significance of care in beginning again?
Well, I mean, I think that's very important. You can only give what you get. So I think self-care is greatly necessary before you can even, you know, go out and serve somebody in a sense, or meet or give of self. But that is important. I think for me, care, that self-care, if we're talking about self-care, I think also got to keep in mind, you know, as a person who has a family himself, you know, I can't stop watering my garden and giving too much of myself, because the last thing I need is to recreate that cycle that we've lived in. And so that's very important, you know, because I as a leader, you know, I get called and pulled in many directions, but I got to take care of my backyard first before, so that doesn't contribute to what I'm fighting up against, you know. So that's very, very important. Self-care to me has to happen.
The importance of care, Dr. Stanton.
I don't know that I can build on that much, except to say, you know, to agree, but also to say care. And I'd love what you said in terms of politicians are supposed to be public servants.
Well, they are.
And so when we talk about care, we are also talking about care for others. And to honor people who care for others, I think, is really important. And not only honor them, but to find a way to really value their contributions. The professional carers, the women who are going out of the workplace because they need to care for their children or their elderly parents. People who have that kind of mandate to care, that needs to be valued.
Yeah, no, it's important. A question specifically for Dr. Stanton. Would you say that social isolation has hit one generation harder than another, say Gen Z or boomers or millennials?
Social isolation is bad for everybody. So I don't want to say, anybody's home free when you're socially isolated. But yes, we do know that that young adults, teenagers, young adults do seem to be being hit particularly hard. That time when they may be, transitioning into adulthood or making their kinds of roles in life. There is pretty good evidence that people in that like 18 to 30 range are being hit hard by social isolation, in part because those connections at that time when you're really solidifying your identity is really important. And so social isolation can be very difficult during that time.
Question for Bamby and Fabian. What role do you see local community colleges playing in support of your specific communities?
Well, I guess I can start, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's a big role that community colleges can play into the development of our communities, right? Like I'm a part of a community college, right? As a non-traditional student, right? I got my master's degree. Well, it took me 2 years to complete my thesis, but I was also building an organization at the same time. So, but anyways, I think, there's money in the educational system from the government, right? And so I think we need to be able to create programs that speak specifically for, undocumented folk. We need to build the pipeline specifically to bring transgender non-conforming people into the educational system, right? Because that's one of the things that have impacted us the most. And really, change policies and that are in place that are, in simple things that people think are complicated, like, why don't you just make your bathrooms gender neutral, right? Like, you're going to tell me that you have your bathrooms in your house separated by gender? No, right? Like, that is a social construct, right? And so, things like that are as simple as doing that so that there's no, continued violence, right? But there's so many things that could be done. Obviously, investing in the arts, right? Like, there's not enough investment in the arts, and I think that's something that could be done at the community level. At all levels, but
especially community colleges. I'm also a graduate of a community college. I teach at a community college, Orange Coast College, and I see so many students come here, come to our classes to, again, I know we've said this many times, but to begin again, to at least explore the possibilities. And it's a far more affordable method of doing so than the Cal States and UCs, which are great institutions, of course, or the private universities. Fabian.
I like that investment in the arts. We haven't talked about the power that's in the healing of the arts. As an artist, and also arts were very instrumental during the pandemic. All disciplines and how they were able to help hold people during these times. But I would say that the invitation to the college is to, I'm just going to go out on a limb, you know what I mean? But I think I could be an instructor at a community college, you know what I'm saying? So it would be nice for them to start to discuss what does it look like to bring formerly incarcerated lived experience into becoming an instructor in the community college that's going to really bring some cultural relevancy or some, not cultural relevancy, but some I don't even know what I call it education. You know what I'm trying to get
experience.
at?
Learn your expertise. The life that folks like yourself and the people you work with, it is an expertise that other people just don't have. And especially when it comes to the arts or whatever it is, it's just going to teach the students that much more than someone who didn't have it.
Well, it happens most of the time. We get a lot of college students that come into our organization, or at least to come and interview and write thesis on my life story, or what are the findings? What is it? How is it that you came about? And they take it back to the college and say, look what I found. And it's like, and I have to take the back seat, but let's flip that script. So help me flip that script. You don't have to come look to write a thesis. Let me come in And I think that's where we should explore. I think it'd be great. I'm not saying that it's not happening, but I think we can actually make it more intentional in that way. And it would really create a pathway for some of the homeboys and homegirls who are seeking higher education, you know?
No, totally, 1,000%. And then the final question, Alicia Guadalupe Garcia, right there, it says, what is one piece of advice all of you can give to your audience here today that has helped you stay motivated within your leadership role you have created for your community, our community? So we'll go with Dr. Stanton over there at the end.
I don't think that there's a one-size-fits-all, and so I think that that's an individual answer. I can say for myself and from some of the evidence that finding something meaningful to sort of savor and notice every day, if possible, that's very motivating. So when I see a first-generation student who is so excited because they get to, they get to be at UCLA and they've transferred and they're, it's just like a dream for them. When I see that, that's completely motivating. So finding something every day, or at least frequently, to notice and to savor what's meaningful.
That's great. Like, even if you're a leader, you could still learn from others and you could still be motivated to learn how to lead even more. That's incredible. Bamby?
What is one piece of advice that I can give to this beautiful and amazing audience that has helped me stay motivated within my leadership role that I have created for our community? Well, one advice or one ask, actually, I'm gonna make of all of you is, well, a couple of things. One, I want to invite you to come and visit our organization. See who we are, see what we do, see the people that we work with and for. And I hope that you take that charge. The other thing that I want to ask you is to think about how you can help us as an organization, as the only trans-led organization here in Los Angeles that is doing this work for our community. I can assure you, if each of you commits into raising $1,000, that you can ask your friends, that you can ask whoever. I think we have 50 people here. We can raise $50,000 together. And I do want to say that the work that I've done and the work that we've done as an organization, I have not done it by myself, right? Many people has contributed for my leadership development. Many people has partnered with us for us to do the amazing work that we've done, but there's a lot of work that we need to do. And so I want to invite you to participate and be part of the change that needs to happen for our community. And I know that we can do it. I know that we can do it. We just need to be intentional about it, right? And you don't have to do it this month. I know that people are thinking like, oh, I have to buy gifts and all of this and the holidays, whatever. It's all good. But if you can commit, you don't have to like even raise your voice or raise your hand and say yes, but commit to yourself that you are going to support our people, our community, our organization. Then that's a personal commitment that you're doing to yourself. And you're not only going to help me continue to develop my leadership, but you're going to contribute to develop the leadership of Lisa Ceballos, who is one of our case managers who's here, or Janetza, who is here, who recently, and I'm sorry that I'm disclosing this, but she's recently got out of immigration detention, right? So she needs a lot of support. And so, we need to, if we want to be part of the change, the only way that we can be part of it is through a contribution. It could be monetary or it could be voluntary, right? And so please be part of the change the change that you want to see in the world. And don't just hear it and that's it, right? Like live it, be part of it.
Be the change.
Yes.
Like that old, wonderful cliche. Fabian, what keeps you motivated?
I mean, I would have to stay along the lines of Bamby. I think, for a very long time, I have had a vision and mission to carry out within the community of Boyle Heights, and this is how the Homeboy Art Academy was giving birth. And as the co-founder and executive director, I would also invite you to come check us out. We have a lot of youth, young adult, who are straddling the fence, gang involved, and we impact them via the arts, via all disciplines. So it would be great for you to come and experience what is the healing through the power of arts. At the same time, spend some time with these youth, get to know them, listen to their stories, and maybe there you might find a purpose or some sense of mission that you can create for yourself that would also motivate you to keep going and being part of that solution, helping us to make the world a safer place.
Awesome, incredible words. Thank you, Zócalo Public Square, for hosting us. Yes, a round of applause for all of our guests. Fabian, Debora, Homeboy Arts Academy, Bamby Salcedo, TransLatin Coalition, and Dr. Stanton from UCLA Psychology. We're going to have a reception right now. Let's continue to have the conversation. Follow Zócalo Public Square on social media, all that good stuff. I'm Gustavo Arellano. Thank you so much.
Can we give a shout out to the people who are watching?
Shout out to those at home.
Shout out to the people at home. So, yeah, sorry, we should acknowledge you as well.
Share our video right now, please.
Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. Muy bien.
Down.